Hey y'all, welcome in. I'm the Poly Patriot, and I'm glad to have you here with me today. If you didn't know, Trump won the election. Most of you definitely know that. But the liberal media is going crazy because they can't figure out why their constituents, why most of the Democratic Party is, one, not listening to the shows. So they're losing ratings. They're possibly losing their jobs, possibly losing the entire business, as in MSNBC or CNN. And so they're trying to find their Joe Rogan. Now, if you didn't already know, Joe Rogan was a Democrat and probably still is, right? He just voted for Trump because he voted for the side that made the most sense, and he could see all these things that were happening going on over the past few years. So let's take a look and listen to some of these CNN hosts try to figure out how they, in their brilliant minds, can figure out how they can create their own Joe Rogan. All right, let's check it out.
Patrick, let's start with that idea. When people, if there are such people who say that they need a liberal Joe Rogan, what do you think they actually mean when they say that?
Well, I think the short answer is they do need a new Joe Rogan. The question is, what does that look like? And I don't know if it's you can actually create it. You know, apparently a lot of Republicans were creating some of these podcasters and so on. So,
okay, first of all, Joe Rogan is not a Republican pundit. All right, he's not coming out here, and he's not for the Republicans. He's not speaking on behalf of the Republican Party. He's just a guy, all right, that has a brain and has seen the things that are going on, and he just so happens to have the biggest platform in the world. And when I mean biggest, I mean bigger than CNN, MSNBC combined. That's the viewers that he has. So lots of power there. But what he also has is sensibility to figure out what's going on. A few years ago, some of you may know, he moved from California, liberal California, because he saw all the craziness that was going on. And he moved to where? Friggin' Texas, right? Granted, he's, in around a city that's, fairly liberal, but still, nonetheless, Texas, the state of Texas. And he's been mulling this over. I mean, he wasn't even a Trump fan, to be honest with you. He never vocally came out until maybe the week before the election that he was actually like siding on that side. But he would just poke at the Democratic Party often because of the holes that he saw in their policies, in their rhetoric, and in the way that they would try to run things and try to control people. And so he just spoke out about it. And he wasn't even coming at it from a political point of view. It was mainly just his perspective on what he's seeing as a man, right? And what these people are they're trying to create something. And that's the problem. When it's authentic, like when you have something that's raw and authentic, that is what people are vibing to nowadays, right? It's not the stuff that's like all glossed up and edited correctly and there's all this. No, like watch a Joe Rogan podcast. Like he doesn't edit anything, right? It's just one cut, 3 hours all the way through, unless they need a bathroom break or something like that, right? And they love it because it's authentic. So he can talk about everything from like the moon landings to like foreign policy, and it's completely okay. Because that's what you do as a human being. You don't just have like this one thought where you're just constantly mulling over the same ideas over and over and over. Like you may like certain things, and that's what he's doing. So they're trying to create or trying to find a podcaster because that's the main way of communication now for our day and age. But not realizing that this is all done authentically, and that's what they're missing. And so hopefully some of our guys on here will open their eyes and see.
now the mainstream media has changed quite a bit. And I don't know if it's so much about who the person is or if there is a person, it's where they're getting their message to.
There is
and
no
how they're
one.
getting it out there. Because obviously, as Joe Rogan himself said, everybody's getting their information from their phone. So where are you going to get that now? You can go on X like I do all the time and you get it from all sides there. But I think for the Democrats, they need to find a way to get their message out to the people that they didn't get it out to.
Misha, I see you ready to jump here.
I agree with that. I think it is more an understanding of the new ecosystem, where people are getting their media messages from. We know that a lot of it is digital, it's social media. People aren't picking up the newspaper anymore.
Did, right? They like TikTok their way through the coconut summer. And
yeah, nobody cared about the coconuts. I think that it was a misreading of the electorate, but also a misreading of where people are getting their information. But in addition to that, it is not one person. I think that, Joe Rogan has had more lives than cats when it comes to changing it up.
All right. So what they're not willing to say is that the Democratic Party has tried to hush or silence every form of communication for the public, that was not censored through them. All right. And they did that through all the social media platforms, right? And then all the most, I would say, if not almost all of the mainstream platforms, right? And it's not working because why? You know what? And I'm going to go scripture on you because scripture speaks of nothing can hide from the light, right? When the light of God is shining on something, when truth is shining on something, there's no way that you can deny what's going on. And that's what we're seeing. People have a brain, they have a conscience, and their spirit is speaking to them, and they know what is right. Now, unless you have cognitive dissonance and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to go with whatever they say, which is a lot of people. Don't get me wrong. But by and large, most of us are using the thing that's between our two ears, and we know what's going on and we can sense it. And that is why there's a polar shift of people that even though they've been putting this horrible rhetoric that, Donald Trump is the Antichrist and he's a sexist and he's a Nazi and he's a commie and blah, 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 blah. People are like, dude, it's hard to believe that because whenever he was in office, he had power. My life was better. My life wasn't as bad as what you're portraying it to be on there. And here they are trying to still figure out what they can do. And she's about to bash Joe Rogan for all the things that he's used to do, which is like, dude, what do you expect? He's not a journalist. He's a grown man who has had a life, who has done things, who's been successful for a long, long time.
I grew up seeing Joe Rogan, have people eat testicles of animals and crawl through the darkness when he was doing Fear Factor. Then he did MMA, and now he's doing this. The man he shapeshifts a lot. That's not necessarily what is the thing that's bringing people in. What Democrats have to do is figure out ways in which they can get to the podcast that their people are listening to. That means your younger voters, your people of color voters. They're getting a lot of information from things that are not, unfortunately, shows like ours right now, that are not shows of the competitors either.
So it sounds like, well, one, let's go back to that. She's bashing Joe Rogan, right? Saying that, oh, he's done MMA and he's done this and that and the other. He's been doing all that stuff and still does that today. That's why people run to him, because he is who he is. He's not hiding anything. He loves MMA. Yeah, he does some talk shows. Yeah, he has his own podcast. Yeah, he has a comedy show. Like, those are all things. Why do we think that we have to box people into, oh, this is what you do, this is who you are, and that's it? That's the problem with the left, all right? They want to box everybody in and keep everyone in their own little cubby hole so that they know exactly where to put them. That way, if they step out of that cubby hole, they know exactly where to put them back into, all right? Now, what she's about to say, she's talking about finding a podcaster that will appeal, right, to their audience, or creating one. So we should see a huge influx of people from the left, of just inspirational speakers who can, maybe they're pleasing to the eye, maybe they're really good with their words, and they're going to try to use them. So who knows who might be bought out, right, from the left, to be able to spew their horrible rhetoric.
You have to find a way to break through that. And I think that for Democrats, largely, their investments have been in ad buys and campaigns that are focused on media that the young people, that diverse voter, just aren't in anymore.
I think Democrats need to find a message first. What is their message to voters? That I don't understand. Do they want to be the far left? Do they want to be moderate? Do they want to be, where do they want to land? I mean, it's like, it's so inauthentic.
Thank you,
to me
Lance.
to hear, like, we need to find our own. How are we going to create somebody out of thin air? First, they need to find a message and figure out who they are, and then figure all that out.
So it wasn't healthcare access. It wasn't.
Ooh, They did not like that at all. And he's absolutely right. Like, what are you? Are you the moderate liberals who are, and I would say most of us in this country are center, slightly left, slightly right, right? Most of us, right? So are you going to be the party that's reasonable to talk to, who can agree to disagree, or are you going to be the people all the way over there that are just in your own little cuckoo world thinking that we need to all just fall in line with whatever you're saying? And I'm pretty sure he's going to get some opposition right now.
Housing affordability, it wasn't childcare affordability, it wasn't having assistance in your home for the that sandwich generation. None of those things.
Look, I'm not. Look, you guys are the one arguing all the time on TV and on radio and everywhere else about what the message is. I'm just saying they need to figure out the message. And then,
to be clear, Republicans argue about their message all the time, and I think I grew up with right-wing radio and obviously Rush Limbaugh. There's always been a robust right-wing media ecosystem. And the question I have is, how much of this is actually about audience and what you will allow? Meaning, the campaign didn't let Kamala Harris sit for 3 hours. And I don't think the campaign would have put her in front of Theo Vaughn to talk about his cocaine habit. Like, Democrats have a different sense of what's okay to do.
That's actually...
They're saying that maybe the Democrats just have a higher moral standard, which is why they didn't put her in front of Joe Rogan for 3 hours unedited. Mind you, he really wanted her to be on there, but they had stipulations, as in he had to fly to her, they had to have editing, they could only do so long. And that is the problem. Again, wanting to censor, wanting to control what you see and hear instead of being raw, authentic, and honest.
Precisely the point. However, Bernie Sanders had no problem going on Joe Rogan years ago when Joe Rogan endorsed him. I've been on Rogan's show 3 times. I've probably heard over 100 hours of it in the past decade. A decade ago, Joe Rogan was a Bernie Sanders supporter who would get emotional talking about how important it is to legalize marijuana, who would get emotional talking about how important it is to get Christianity out of politics, in particular on the abortion issue, who had a host of left-wing opinions, including about healthcare. And liberals drove him away by calling him a racist, unearthing jokes he made, calling him a misogynist, really with no evidence.
When you make racist
calling him
jokes
a transphobe,
about people of color,
calling him a
people
lot of
calling you
comedians
racist is likely
make
going to
jokes
happen.
all the time. Calling him transphobic because he didn't like
He
seeing
also didn't
Fallon
love the
Fox.
vaccine.
Again, raw, authentic, and honest, right? You can tell in her demeanor, in her spirit, that she's upset. Like, hearing what Coleman has to say, she doesn't like it. So that's why she's literally interrupting and trying to speak over him, right? Again, she just proved what he just said, right? He just said that the Dems drove Rogan away through their calling him a racist and a bigot and whatnot. And then she just affirms that, right? And then you're wondering why the biggest platform in media, and again, did the right do that? We knew he was a Democrat this whole time. We knew that he wanted weed legal. We knew that he wanted, he was okay with certain things, but that's him, and he's completely allowed to have that, right? But again, if you're not falling in line with what they want, they don't want you then.
Thing, right?
Beating up,
to our point earlier.
That also used to be a left-wing opinion, to be against vaccines 20 years ago. Again, so he actually hasn't shapeshifted very much, to your point. The Democratic Party has shapeshifted and driven him away and alienated his followers.
I think what he ended up seeing was an American political sphere that shifted, and he found ways. He's a lot smarter than people give him credit for. He found ways to walk into where those people were. Yes, he was a proud, ultra leftist, and then he became a proud person on the right, largely because he saw shifting towards the right, and that's where his money and his audience could come from. He shifted because more of his listeners shifted, and that's where he drove it to. That's nothing more than consumerism at work.
Which of his beliefs changed in the past 10 years? It's really hard to point out which of his beliefs.
But can I zoom out from him? Because I think there is this, and I see you nodding as well, this kind of bigger question. You have a Jon Stewart, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have Pod Save America. You have all kinds of
Conan
even
O'Brien,
the late night, television brigade.
They're all left on the late night shows. I think what he said to me, what rings true about this whole concept of finding the liberal Joe Rogan, is he said inauthentic. And when you talked about what Kamala Harris did in this campaign, knocking on doors, doing it sort of the traditional way, right? Raising tons of money. But there's something about Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, or Joe Rogan or whomever, they are authentic.
Right. Totally
And that comes through to people. And when you're trying to get your message out, whatever that message is, you have to be authentic.
You
And I
can
think
be
they missed
authentic.
it.
Bam. He said it. All right. Why? Because people can feed and read in between the lines. When they see a woman who's standing up there, who's kind of fumbling around her words and just kind of like having that word salad buffet on you, you know that she's not really saying anything, that she's not authentic in what she's saying. And you can tell and you can read people. Like, people are good at that. Like, discernment is one thing that we have, especially in this day and age. There's so much fake around us. It's so easy to spot them, and it's good when you can hear somebody who's coming with a real approach, who's being themselves, like Joe Rogan was, and how Donald Trump is as well. So, hey guys, thank you for joining me. I'm the Poly Patriot. Please like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.